Right at the end of World War II, the world expected one thing to happen: that India would finally become free. Every sign pointed in that direction. Britain was tired, broke, and shaken. Indian leaders were united. Millions of people were demanding independence. Everything was moving toward one clear future. But pause for a moment. What if things did not follow the path we know? What if Britain, struggling to hold on to its collapsing empire, made one last desperate decision and refused to leave India?
Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. More alternate history twists are coming your way.
This alternate world begins on a heavy morning in 1945, when British officials gather inside a smoke-filled room in London. A decision is placed on the table. Many say the empire is over, but one group believes the opposite. They argue that losing India means losing everything: economic power, global influence, and the last symbol of British greatness. So instead of planning the transfer of power, they plan something different: a strategy to stay. News travels across the seas and reaches India. Leaders who spent decades fighting for freedom now face a shocking twist. Independence, which felt so close, suddenly slips away. Tension spreads like heat in the summer air. Crowds gather, not just with hope, but with anger. Every street fills with questions. What will happen next? How far will Britain go? And how far will Indians push back? The British Empire knows its rule can't continue the old way. So officials try a new approach. They promise reforms, jobs, investments, and a stronger local government. They talk of partnership instead of control. But deep down, everyone knows the truth. Power still sits in British hands. Every promise feels like a temporary bandage on a wound that keeps opening. In this world, the Quit India movement becomes something far larger and far more unpredictable. Instead of protests fading after WWII, they rise with new energy. Huge demonstrations start in major cities. Young people join with fierce determination. The feeling is clear: the country refuses to be ruled any longer. Yet Britain, pressured by global politics, refuses to pull back. Why global politics? Because the war may be over, but a new struggle begins: the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union compete for influence in Asia. Britain fears that if India becomes independent, it may lean toward one side, breaking the balance of power. By holding India, Britain hopes to stay relevant. To London, India becomes not only a colony, but a strategic shield in a dangerous world. But the cost of holding that shield is high. British troops increase across Indian cities. Curfews return. Newspapers face strict rules. Leaders are detained. Britain calls it maintaining order. People call it something else: the return of chains that should have vanished. And in this growing storm, India starts to split, not just between political parties, but between visions of the future. Mahatma Gandhi responds with deep sorrow, yet refuses to stop. He calls for full non-cooperation across the country. His message travels from villages to cities: do not support the government that refuses your freedom. But this time, the British administration reacts differently. They cannot afford large-scale disobedience. They fear that losing control in India will weaken their entire empire, so they tighten their grip. Then comes a turning point. A key clash occurs in 1947, not over Independence Day celebrations, but over a mass protest in Calcutta. The crowd swells to hundreds of thousands, demanding British withdrawal. British troops, frightened and overwhelmed, resort to force. The footage of the incident spreads worldwide. Newspapers in America, France, and even inside Britain print images that shake public opinion. The world sees a mighty empire using violence to hold power in a land asking for freedom. As pressure builds, Britain faces a dilemma: leave India and lose global influence, or stay and lose moral credibility. Some politicians warn that staying will destroy Britain's reputation forever. Others warn that leaving will destroy Britain's strength forever. The debate tears through the British government, dividing ministers, newspapers, and the public. Meanwhile, India feels the impact of a prolonged struggle. Without independence, the country faces a slowdown in progress. Education remains limited. Industrial growth stays controlled by British interests. Indian companies struggle. Agriculture policies continue to favour exports over local needs. The economic gap widens. Young Indians grow up in a land full of talent but limited opportunities. Every year, more and more people question whether peaceful resistance is enough. Then a new player enters the scene, Subhas Chandra Bose's supporters, who believe that peaceful protest cannot end the empire. A faction pushes for militant resistance. Small groups form underground networks, planning targeted strikes on government buildings and supply lines. The British intelligence community becomes extremely busy, constantly chasing threats that seem to appear everywhere. India slowly turns into a land of both peaceful marches and hidden rebellion. The situation becomes even more complex when religious tensions rise. In real history, Britain left in 1947, leading to partition. But in this alternate path, Britain's presence delays everything. The Hindu-Muslim divide continues to grow. But with no exit plan, British officials try to manage the conflict themselves. They set up committees, border discussions, and community dialogues. But nothing reduces the tension. Instead, the delay makes the divide sharper. Rumours spread, mistrust grows, and local disputes turn violent. Many begin to believe that freedom might only come through breaking the country apart. Global powers watch closely. The United States pressures Britain to grant independence, hoping to win India as a democratic ally. The Soviet Union pushes a different message, encouraging Indians to rise against imperialism. India becomes a major battleground of ideas, each side trying to shape the nation's future. None of this helps Britain. Their rule becomes harder with every passing month. By the early 1950s, Britain faces a new set of problems. The cost of ruling India drains their economy. Post-war recovery slows down. Public services collapse in British cities. British citizens ask, why are we still spending money to control a country that doesn't want us? Political rivals use the India issue to attack each other. Elections in Britain become a battlefield over one question: should the empire end? Inside India, the struggle takes a different turn. A new generation rises, children who grew up during the war, who heard their parents talk about freedom every night, and who are no longer willing to wait. Student movements become powerful. They organize strikes across universities, shut down government offices, and spread messages through pamphlets and secret radio broadcasts. British officials realize that the fight is no longer limited to leaders. It is now rooted deeply in the hearts of millions. The final blow comes when a massive railway strike spreads across the country. Railways are the backbone of British control. Troops, supplies, and goods depend on them. When the trains stop, everything stops. For Britain, this becomes a nightmare scenario. They try to break the strike, but workers refuse. The message is clear: India will no longer move until Britain steps aside. Under global pressure, economic collapse, political revolt, and a nation united in resistance, Britain finally accepts the truth it tried so hard to avoid. A rushed conference is held in Delhi. Indian leaders demand full independence. British officials, exhausted and cornered, agree. But there is one more twist in this alternate history. The delay of independence makes partition far more complicated. Years of rising tension erupt all at once. When borders are finally drawn in the early 1950s, violence unfolds on a scale larger than the real 1947 partition. Millions migrate. Entire towns empty overnight. British troops try to manage the chaos but fail. The world watches a tragedy unfold, one that could have been avoided had independence come earlier. Still, through all the loss and heartbreak, a new India is born. The freedom that should have arrived in 1947 comes nearly a decade late, but when it arrives, it arrives with tremendous force. The people feel a deep, unbreakable unity. The long struggle shapes a new political vision. Leaders focus intensely on rebuilding, healing wounds, and ensuring that no foreign power ever controls the destiny of the country again. In this alternate world, Britain does not leave India smoothly. It leaves after chaos, conflict, and global pressure. And the empire that once spanned the world finally understands a lesson that history had been whispering for years. A nation can be controlled for a time, but its spirit cannot be owned forever. India rises, Britain changes, and the world learns that delaying freedom only makes its arrival more powerful.